Who's not coming down the drive? Who's not coming down the drive? And the leader she is red white. Ain't nothing finer in the red. When the drums are marching straight to bed. Let it go! Let it go!
What's up, y'all? This is John back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. We've got Grayson Weir back with us, as he always is, to talk about Georgia or Ole Miss for the Ole Miss Georgia game. So my first question, with the way Ole Miss has gone this year, how many doctor's appointments, whether therapy, cardiology, neurology, have you needed because of the team and specifically Lane this season?
Man, I just need some sleep. It's been a long couple months with all this back and forth and the chaos and this and that and the other thing, but the drama's been behind us pretty much since after the Egg Bowl. So we've been able to focus on going 1-0, focus on the task at hand. Um, yeah, it was a little exhausting there after the Florida game up until the Egg Bowl, with all the drama and the shenanigans on social media and all that stuff. But it's in the past now. We're focused on the present. We're where our feet are.
Speaking of the present coaching situation, at least coordinator and position coaches, still a little crazy. So, who on the coaching staff is staying?
Most of the defensive staff is still intact. Most of the offensive staff is going to follow Lane to Baton Rouge once this playoff run is over, whether that be Friday, whether that be a month from now. We'll see. But the guys like Charlie Weiss Jr., Dane Stevens, etc., are all splitting their Kevin Smith Jr. now too is confirmed, going down to Baton Rouge, and they're splitting their time to where, for example, the Christmas week, they spent Monday and Tuesday in Baton Rouge getting ready for the transfer portal, all that stuff for next week. They went home to Oxford and or wherever their family is, for Christmas, and then they'll get back to Oxford for a typical kind of game week preparation, uh, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending on timeline, and what that looks like. But they were back in Oxford as of Christmas Eve, kind of doing some light game planning. But while they are away, Pete Golding has either elevated um, some of the lower assistant coaches to the intern position, for whatever role they are in, whether that be, let's use wide receivers, for example. We have an interim wide receivers coach. We have a full-time wide receivers coach, but the full-time wide receivers coach is going to Baton Rouge once this playoff run is over. The interim wide receivers coach is handling all of the in-house duties when that wide receivers coach is in Baton Rouge over the next however many days, weeks, months, whatever it may be. So it is crazy. But most of the defensive staff is staying intact. And then the offensive staff has kind of been slowly revamped already to some extent with interns, promotions. For example, like an offensive analyst was bumped from I'm sorry, a defensive analyst was bumped from defensive analyst to full-time inside linebackers coach. So just kind of moving people along as you can. Those guys are handling the in-house duties and whatever, but then Charlie Weiss Jr. can game plan. Does it matter if he's game planning from his office in Oxford or if he's game planning from his office in Baton Rouge? Uh, it's kind of more or less the same. I mean, it's not great. It's not what you'd really be hoping for. Um, could be a lot worse, and that the staff is kind of slowly piecing itself together.
So, offensive and defensive coordinators next season, full time guys, who are they?
As of right now, John David Baker is coming back to Oxford. He was, a quarterbacks coach, kind of offensive guru in Oxford for a while. Recently went over to East Carolina. Had one of the most prolific offenses in the nation over there at ECU last season. He's coming back as the offensive coordinator. As for everything else, it's kind of still up in the air. Pete's putting the guys in place that he needs to have guys in place, but because he is a defensive guy, And his Twitter bio still reads defensive coordinator, which I think is awesome. He is handling kind of the defensive responsibilities in terms of recruiting, et cetera. And then he'll bring on, his full defensive staff once this run is over. We saw as of right now, the defensive coordinator position is still kind of up in the air, but John David Baker is coming back to Oxford as the OC.
So you were in Oxford for the first round, right?
Yep.
Was that the best environment you've ever been in Oxford? And number two, were you wearing a Santa hat?
I yeah, so yes, I did wear the Santa hat as I was asked. I didn't wear it the whole game because I had a lid I wanted to flex, but
Also,
I
if it
put
was
it on for
anything
the
close to the temperature it was here, it's not Santa hat weather.
yeah, it was really warm. It was kind of I mean it was great. You can't complain. You'd rather 60 and sunny and over 15 and wet.
Absolutely.
So it was great, but yeah, it was not Santa weather. I put it on for the world record, and then I took it back off. But yeah, it was without a doubt the best environment I've ever experienced, maybe for a football game ever. It was just rocking from start to finish. You can hear, I know those who have heard me on in the past, I always have a raspy voice, but it is now the week after uh, the game in Oxford, and my voice is still recovering because I've had to talk to in-laws and all that stuff over Christmas. I haven't had full vocal rest yet, but I'm gonna rest up for heading down to the Sugar Bowl next week.
So going back to that first round game, Trinidad Chambliss was out for a little bit, suspected concussion, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, is he going to be close to healthy for this game?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be fine. From what I understand, he just got a little banged up. I actually in the stadium we couldn't get a read on what was going on because it looked like he grabbed his knee when he got
Hmm.
tackled, and then he was kind of gimpy as he walked off the field. Then they were saying head. Nobody really knew what was going on, and we didn't have enough service to get on Twitter or anything. And so I'm panic calling my brother, my sister, my dad, my mom, literally everyone I can try to get a hold of. And my dad ended up answering, and if he's getting a phone call in the middle of a football game, he thought I was probably going to jail or something. And so what's going on? Did you mean to call me? I'm like, yes, actually, I did. Stop what you're doing right now. We need to know what's up with Trinidad Chambliss. Is he injured? What's his status? Is it a knee? He said ESPN was reporting concussion. I thought that was kind of weird because it looked like a knee thing, but they said concussion, and he was back in the game in the second half and played awesome. So he's going to be totally okay. And from what I understand, like has not been limited in practice at all.
So his eligibility situation is weird. Another one of those. He tried to go under the Pavia rule, I believe, and
Mhm.
then I guess that didn't work. Now he's trying to file for a medical red shirt. But if he gets another year, do you think he returns to Oxford or follows Lane to the land of traders?
So at this point, I don't know if Trinidad's going to get this waiver. I was surprised that they didn't just grant it to him. I know Ferris State and junior college is a little different. D2 versus JUCO, like whatever in terms of the ruling and the Pavia and all that stuff. But when you look at his career, he redshirted as a freshman. He took a full year off due to injury as a or I guess as a redshirt freshman. So his second year at Ferris State. And so now Tom Mars, who actually is a villain in Oxford from all the things that happened, back in the Hugh Freeze days, he's now representing Trinidad for this medical red shirt. And I would be surprised if he didn't get one based on kind of some of the things, some of the other people in college football who have received a seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th,
Right,
12th
like
year.
TJ Finley's a father of three trying to play for his seventh year of eligibility.
Yeah, exactly. So if a guy like TJ Finley can get his seventh, Trinidad should probably get his sixth. We'll see. I know they put the media kind of blitz on over the last few days here to put the pressure on the NCAA just to kind of make it happen. But if he does get that waiver, I don't think he's far enough down the road yet to figure out where he's going to end up. With that being said, I know he's going to evaluate all of his options. He would be silly not to. He should. And to be completely honest, I don't know if Lane even wants him. Lane didn't even really want Trinidad to start at the beginning of the year, he kept kind of leaving the door open for Austin Simmons to come back, and Trinidad just kept winning and playing and winning and winning and winning, and kind of forced Lane's hand to play him down the stretch. And that's not to say Trinidad doesn't like, I'm sorry, Lane doesn't like Trinidad, but I think if Trinidad was to get this extra waiver, I don't know that Lane would be on the phone with him saying, "Get down here, get down here, get down here," when he could go get a guy like DJ Lagway or I guess Sorsby, even though he's going to Texas Tech, but someone that maybe is a little bit flashier, if you will. But we're not that far down the road yet. You know, Trinidad hasn't gotten the waiver, one, and two, he's focused. He hasn't thought about his future because his focus right now is to do what he did last year and win a national championship.
So the only game that they lost this year was obviously this first matchup against Georgia, but it was one of the best games of his career, just level of play. Like he didn't put up gaudy stats per se, but I want to say he had 4 total touchdowns in
Mhm.
this one. Um, do you think he plays anywhere close to that level again?
So it's funny you say that. He did play a great game. Don't get me wrong. But he kind of fell apart down the last 6 minutes of the game, and that's what ultimately lost. In a lot of perspective, I think kind of the Rebs lost that game because Trinidad couldn't execute down those last 6 minutes. It was kind of his first real road environment in the SEC. It was his first big game. And he just kind of fell apart. So now he's got his. That's not to say he didn't have, you know, important game experience before, but it's different. A D2 national championship is different than a road game in Athens. It just is. And so those last 6 minutes of the game were not great. He played great for the first 3 quarters and then kind of fell apart during the fourth quarter. And he knows that. He's talked about it relentlessly. You know, that was on me. That he took accountability in his press conference the last few days, even after the first round playoff game, saying that first Georgia game, that was my fault. I fell apart. I didn't do what I needed to do to win the game. You know, I didn't put the team on my back. All accountability. Um, and he wants revenge. You know, he wants a chance to right that wrong where he went out and he didn't execute down the stretch, and he didn't win that game because that 4th and 1 was kind of a big spot during that game. But then also just Trinidad had a couple opportunities to find some open guys and missed them and couldn't execute, got lost in the backfield, and so yes, do I think he plays close to that level? Yeah, I think he's really comfortable in this system in this offense by now. Credit to Charlie Weiss Jr. as someone who has talked ill of Charlie Weiss in the past. I take all of it back. Not only has he been really cool about basically saying, I am with this team until the end, despite my obligations to LSU. We've kind of figured out that maybe where we used to think he was a guy who, I don't know, how would you say, like, um, who was only there because of Lane. He's now kind of separated himself from Lane. It's become clear that Lane is the reason that everybody thinks of Charlie Weiss Jr. attached to Lane rather than the other way
What?
around.
Lane's selfish and egotistical? No.
Shocker, right?
No.
Shocker. So yeah, I think that's something where if we have our primary, the Revs have the primary play caller in place, which as of right now, Charlie Weiss Jr. is there. He and Trinidad are going to find the best way to win this game, and Charlie will put Trinidad in the best position to succeed. The same way he did the first matchup. Now it's Trinidad's chance to execute down the stretch.
Kwan Lacey, Kiwan, however you pronounce his first name, I've heard it every way on every broadcast. I still don't quite know.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's Kiwan is what everybody says, but I don't know how
Okay.
the broadcast like consistently gets it wrong.
Right, we thought we left those days behind when CBS no longer broadcasted SEC games, but
Yeah, exactly.
but his worst rushing game of the season in this first matchup, 12 carries for 31 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns. But do you think the change in staff makes it to where there's more of an emphasis to get him going, or with Georgia's rushing defense, do you think it's kind of close to the same game plan?
Yeah, I think it'll be close to the same game plan because that game, I mean, that game plan looked good the first time. Obviously, you'd want to get him going more than he was in that first matchup. But if it's not there, you know, you can kind of extend that run game through screens, through whatever, and they will adapt. But yeah, in an ideal world, you can get Lacey going early. And now the The question about Trinidad's health, I think, is more of a concern here with Lacey. He's dealing with a bruised shoulder. He came out of the game against Tulane before halftime, ended up coming back in, but didn't really do a whole lot in the second half. Logan Diggs was getting a lot of touches, played really well. Shout out to Logan Diggs. Um, this bruised shoulder thing is what they're calling it. And what does that mean? I think a bruise is probably better than a dislocated shoulder or a torn rotator cuff, etc. Um, but if he can't go, I think that changes a lot of the offense, but I don't think that'll be a concern. I think that it's going to be, he's going to be healthy. He's going to be good to go. And this offense goes as he goes. So if they can get him going, 12 carries for 31 yards in that first matchup, not great. You want him to be getting more touches for more yards in every scenario possible. He's kind of, not kind of, he is our best player this year.
And the bruised shoulder is definitely interesting playing on an unforgiving surface like they have
Mhm.
in the Superdome with the turf. Um, because a lot of people don't realize this, but underneath the turf is more often like hard plywood eh, right on top of concrete. Like there's no bounce. There's no forgiving. Like you don't make a dent in the turf like you do on a field. When you hit the ground, it puts a dent in you.
Mhm.
So the wide receiver and passing game has been great. Third nationally in passing offense, and importantly, third in explosive passing plays. Um, Trinidad's spreading the ball out really well, but in this first game, Dejon Stribling had almost 100 yards. What is your expectation for the passing game, and do you think there's one guy that's able to go off again?
Yeah, keep it consistent. I mean, the passing game has been interesting to where there haven't been a lot of those deep balls. Every so often they'll get an explosive play, but they're not throwing, to the sidelines or to deep as often as maybe they would have with an Austin Simmons or even last year with Dart. Um, that being said, Trinidad's throwing for almost 300 plus yards a game. So it's not like he's struggling in that aspect. I think this passing game is crucial for the run game. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but you have to be able to spread out the offense, the Georgia defense rather, because you can't have Georgia's defense stacking the box against Lacey, because then Lacey won't get going. Um, so if you can spread out the defense and force Kirby to open up that front defensive front, you can get Lacey going a little more. Um, I think Stribling's awesome. I think he's perhaps the most underrated player on this team, most underrated acquisition of the offseason. Just a big bruiser, can get downfield and pick up his feet and run when he needs to. That being said, I think I said this last time too. I feel like Caden Lee is due for a big game, and I think this could be the chance for him to get open over the middle against a linebacking core that is going to kind of crash, I think, pretty hard and focus on stopping Lacey. That allows you to get that slot open. So I think Caden Lee is due, and I hope that he can go out and show out in what might be his last game at Ole Miss. So yeah, I think the passing game you have to get it going because then that allows you to give the ball to Lacey. I think Lacey is the key to the winning this game, and if he can play well and then Trinidad can execute around him, it's a good recipe for success.
So going into the offensive line, they've been pretty good at protecting the passer this season. 29th nationally in sacks allowed, but 64th in tackles for loss allowed. And I remember in the first game, in the first interview with you, we were joking about how Georgia cannot get to the passer, just like
Yep.
can't do it. But they've gotten significantly better in both areas since the first matchup. 12 of the 20 sacks Georgia has on the season has come since this game, the first time. Um, does that concern you?
The Georgia defense always concerns me. I mean, that's always going to be the case. I know we were joking last time about how they were kind of on a down year or whatever, and obviously they've come roaring back. Yeah, the Georgia defensive front is always going to be a concern. I think the offensive line at Ole Miss is built uh, to compete with a. This team was assembled the same way last year and the year prior to beat a team like Georgia. You have to have those big guys in the front, in the trenches, that can get push on the defensive line, that can get into the second level and get their block onto a linebacker and onto a crashing safety, whatever that may be. Um, and they've done a good job of it. That being said, this is a different animal. Yes, Georgia's going to get theirs. It comes out to how much can you mitigate that uh, struggle, right? Like how your Georgia's going to get first down, a sack on first down that's going to put you in an awkward spot on second down. They're going to force third and long. How can you rally back from that? Is where that's going to come from. Because yeah, I mean the Georgia defensive front is always a monster, but this offensive line, especially Diego Pounds, oh my God, I saw him in person for the first time over the weekend. That is the biggest 20-something-year-old I've ever seen in my entire life, and so I'm not worried necessarily about the offensive line, but I do know that Georgia's defense will get theirs, and you got to mitigate, the damage outside of that.
I will say it's always funny to me when, because like people like us, we watch almost every game. Every
Hmm.
game that's on TV, we watch it. And then, we're like, oh yeah, like this guy's a foot and a half taller than the referee who was a college quarterback. We know he's huge. And then you see these people in person, and you're like, we're not the same species. There's no
It's
way.
unbelievable. It's
I shook
unbelievable.
I shook hands of a Georgia defensive lineman one time, and I have big hands. Like I'm about 6 foot. I got big hands. This dude's fingers came down past my wrist, and I'm like, I don't. There's no way we're the same species. It's not a thing.
Built different.
Literally, quite literally. I don't think the building blocks of our cells are the same chemical. They're
No.
just not. Um, but moving over to the Ole Miss defense, the front has been a little bit hit or miss this season with their ability to get behind the line of scrimmage, middle of the pack when it comes to rushing defense. Is the Georgia O line versus the Ole Miss defensive front still one of the more concerning aspects of the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think this game comes because the defense has played well. They have not been the defense that they were last year. It's obviously different players. It's maybe not as talented on paper or whatever you want to say. Fine. But there's some dudes, that Xavier Harris has been awesome. Um, you have to you have to execute. I mean, is really what it comes down to. And I think this week, as a defensive minded coach, I think Pete saw what happened against Tulane because don't get me wrong, keeping Tulane out of the end zone was great. Um, two huge turnovers. There was a pick and a fumble in the first half that were both just massive in terms of changing the game. Um, but all things considered, Tulane was moving the ball. And Tulane, while a good offense, is not Georgia. Georgia has been able to move the ball consistently, pound the rock. Gunnar Stockton's going to do what Gunnar Stockton does. Um, So yeah, I would say that is a concern, but I think there's more concern with the secondary. I think you can mitigate that kind of defensive front long enough where you don't allow the running backs, Georgia's running backs, to get more than 2 or 3 yards of carry. The question is, can you stop them once they break into the second level, and can you prevent Stockton from going over the top to the corners? Because there will be a stack similar maybe to the alternate game plan. You kind of have to stack the box a little bit against a team like Georgia, and then that opens up kind of the outside to be exposed. I think that's my bigger concern. But we saw it in the first matchup, right? Like Georgia's offensive line is going to get the push. Um, you just got to be able to push back. So yeah, I think that is a concern. I think the defense, this game will be won or lost by Ole Miss's defense. I think.
And going into the secondary a little bit, Gunnar had one of the better games of his career against Ole Miss in the first matchup, and then
Hmm.
last week we saw what Jake Retzloff did. What was it? A little over 300 yards passing.
Hmm.
So, what are you expecting the secondary to try to do anything different?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope that they kind of step up here. I mean, they made enough plays to prevent I guess and Pete said this earlier this week too. You have to force the offense into uncomfortable situations on first and second down. Because what happened a lot against Tulane was Tulane had a lot of 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, whatever. And the defense stepped up and made stops in those crucial downs. The problem is Georgia's a different animal from Tulane. So if you're not getting them into 3rd and long, if you're not getting them into 2nd and 20, whatever it may be, and making them uncomfortable in those early downs, then I think that's when you run into an issue with that defensive front we were talking about, where if Georgia has a 4th and 1, that offensive line is likely going to get that push off the ball and get Stockton across the line up the middle. So then whereas Retzlaff, Ole Miss was able to stuff Tulane on a couple of 4th down quarterback sneak attempts, um, and short yardage handoffs, whatever. That's not going to be the same with Georgia. So if the secondary continues to, the big issue was they allowed big gains on first and second down. And if that continues to be the case, that's a problem. So you have to force, the defense has to make Georgia's offense uncomfortable on the early downs so that you're putting them in a weird 3rd and something situation, or even, 4th and 3 is better than 4th and 1, because then at the very least you make Kirby think about punting. You make, a lot harder to get 3 yards versus 1, obviously. So I think that's a big concern. And the secondary has been, um, I don't know if it's the primary issue of the Ole Miss defense, but it's definitely one of the bigger issues. And they know that. Pete knows that. It's time to really step up. There are a few big plays, but those big plays have to come on the early downs. They have to.
So, what is your biggest concern for this game?
The secondary. I think if the secondary does not play well, you're allowing Georgia, because Georgia's going to run the ball. They do, always do. Will always pound the rock. Always going to get a couple yards. Going to fall forward. Whatever. Um, that's fine. If the defense can stop Georgia from explosive plays, you're okay mitigating damage and keeping it to 2 or 3 yards a carry, whatever. Obviously, you'd prefer less, but if you're allowing Georgia 2 or 3 yards a carry plus 10, 15, 9 yards, a catch, that's when it becomes an issue of this game could get out of hand quick, if the offense can't then match that scoring numbers. So that's my biggest concern is, can this secondary, really the whole defense, I won't put it just on the secondary, uh, make stops on early downs as opposed to those late downs. That was a big recurring theme against Tulane, that being in the stadium, yes, they had the pick, they had the fumble, whatever. But there were consistent moments in which Tulane would get the ball. They were driving, and then Ole Miss would have to step up. You'd rather have it be the other way, to where you step up and then prevent that drive early rather than late.
And what are you most confident in?
If Kewan Lacey's healthy, I'm most confident in Kewan Lacey. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that he's the best running back in the country this year. It's either him or Ahmad. Can't think of his last name right now. Missouri. But I think Lacey, if this offensive line can get the push that it got against Tulane, against a lot of the other SEC opponents, not necessarily Georgia, um, Lacey will get going, and this dude's just a menace. I think he's incredible. He can get out in space. He can run you over. He can juke you. Like, I think he's awesome. So if he is healthy, I'm most confident in him. I think he's due for just a huge game, because he didn't have one against Tulane, really. I mean, yeah, he had the touchdown on his first carry, whatever, but then he got hurt and just didn't look right. So if he's good to go, I'm always confident in Kewan Lacey.
All right, we're going to pick some games. As always, we're going to give the spread and the over under, but we're just asking for a straight up pick. Starting with the Cotton Bowl, I believe it is. Miami versus Ohio State. Ohio State 9.5 point favorite, over under 42.5.
Credit where credit is due. I did not think Miami was going to beat Texas A&M. at Texas A&M. I didn't realize Texas A&M was as big of a fraud as it is. And Miami really won that game with his defense, which was kind of weird. That being said, I think Ohio State's a different animal. I do think Ohio State's going to roll here.
And we've got the Rose Bowl, Alabama versus Indiana. Indiana 6.5 point favorite, just like everyone expected, versus Alabama. Over under 48.5.
Yeah, imagine if you'd said that to someone 3 years ago. Like, what the heck? Um, I think Indiana, I can't remember his name right now either, so this is kind of a stupid anecdote, but their defensive lineman messed up his, I want to say, like right leg celebrating the Big Ten championship. He's their best player. I can't think of his name right now, so this is dumb, but he got injured during that celebration. I don't know what his status is for this game. Um, hold on, efforting. Stephen Daly,
Stephen Daly, I just looked it up.
yes, and he is.
Oh, Yahoo says season-ending injury.
Okay, so it's over. Yeah, so I think that's a huge problem. Um, I don't want to bet against Signetti because that's what he does is win. Google him. So I'm probably not going to bet this game. But I think Alabama might really get this done here, which I'm rooting for Indiana. I'd love to see Indiana continue to pull this off, but I think Daly being out is going to be a huge problem.
Revenge game for Signetti, as he was like a
True.
defensive analyst or an offensive analyst for 4 years and never was able to get promoted to Alabama.
I
So,
forgot about that. So maybe, yeah, maybe this is it. And I don't want to bet against Sig. So my head says Alabama, my heart says Indiana.
we got the Orange Bowl, Oregon versus Texas Tech. Oregon 2.5 point favorite, over under 52.5.
I don't know. This is one I don't know. This one I think is gonna be a really fun game. I'd like to think Oregon's too fast for Texas Tech, so I think Oregon's gonna outpace them. But that being said, the argument for Texas Tech is that Texas Tech is bigger and stronger than Oregon, and so they could just bully them around. I'm gonna go Oregon, and I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go over here too. I think there's gonna be a lot of points scored in this game. I don't think either defense is special. Big 12, like sure, Texas Tech played well against BYU, whatever, but it's still the
Right.
Big 12.
Like there's just so many. Most of the offenses in the Big 12 this year were one dimensional. Like they
Hmm.
could either run the ball as like a service academy, or they could pass the ball like a Mike Leach team, but neither one could do both. You know.
Yeah, good point.
Um, I also, as soon as the Oregon game was over, I looked at the over for this game. I was like, you don't like 17 yards of play is not a fluke. That's
Yep,
oh, that's. I think that's going to be the best game of the weekend, personally.
I think so too. I think it should be a fun one, and that's why I'm so torn on it. But I'm gonna go Oregon, and I think that over. I mean, it feels like a 35-28 game, but who knows? I mean, Miami, friggin' Texas to A&M was a less than 20-point game, so
It was the most disgusting playoff game we've ever seen.
yeah, it was pretty gnarly. I was in the Grove watching that one.
Ole Miss versus Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Georgia 6.5 point favorite. That's floated from 5.5 to 7. But the over under 56.5.
Why not us? Why not us? Like why not? Let's go in there. I think it's going to be pretty the crowd is going to be split pretty 50-50, if not even maybe 60-40 Rebs. I think it's going to be a rocking the Superdome is going to be rocking. I think it's going to be huge. This game for me comes down to both teams are going to get punched in the mouth. Which team can respond last? Which team can step up and really just it's going to come down to that last possession. I think it's going to be a good game. At least maybe I'm being overly optimistic. Maybe Georgia rolls. I don't know, but why not reps? Like this team is hot. They've got a chip on their shoulder. It's hard to beat a team twice. They've got the game plan that almost beat Georgia in Athens less than 2 months ago. The same team, and at this point in the season, Pete said it time and time again. Players don't give a shit who's leading them out of the tunnel. At this point, it's the players want to play. The primary play callers are in place. Yeah, it's weird. It's super weird having the entire offensive coaching staff in Baton Rouge, on the week before a second round playoff quarterfinal game. Like, it's weird, but sometimes weird is what works. And maybe this is it where this team would just go out, and I think there'd be nothing funnier than winning a national championship without Lane Kiffin. So I'm going Rebs, but I'm only going Rebs based on the fact that I'm not going to pick against them.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. I've picked against Georgia one time in the history of the podcast, and it was for this year's SEC championship game because I was like, I've seen it too many times. I can't pick against Alabama at this point. And then they did what they did, so I get it.
Yeah,
Um, but I appreciate you coming on. It's always a fun time.
sure is.
Tell the people where to find all your stuff.
Yeah, I'm still at Bro Bible, just kicking it over here. They treat me really well. I'm glad to be here. Love telling stories. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at GSONJW, GSonJW. Um, Always stupid stuff, always having fun, and it's always good to be on this podcast. I wish you were coming down to New Orleans for New Year's, but why not us?
Yeah, and I think I talked about it on the show. This time, my wife was the one that like we should go to the Sugar Bowl, and then we looked at flights, and then we looked at tickets, and it was like combined with me being a little superstitious, and by that I mean a lot. And then, I still am a firm believer that once you get out, like when the concourse area of the Superdome, if you've ever visited a prison, which I
Yeah.
realize I'm one of the few people that have, it feels like you're walking through the halls of a prison because you can never go straight for more than 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's a
It is a
weird
weird
feeling
stadium.
place.
Yeah, and then there's no light, there's no windows. You're just kind of
Right.
it is a weird place. But man, it's gonna be rocking on Thursday. It's gonna be nuts in there.
I wish I was going, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad I'm not.
Yeah. Well, my thought process, my wife and I, it's like no mortgage, no kids. Let's run until this team stops running.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, but we're gonna get out of here. I've got a Zoom doctor's appointment in a few minutes, and then I'm actually doing a Texas Tech interview right after that doctor's appointment. So I'll get some interesting takes by some Red Raiders fans.
Yeah, I know nothing about Texas Tech other than what the games that I've watched. I don't know
Right.
what their fan base thinks. I don't know any of that. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I appreciate you coming on.
Always a pleasure.